welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel. This is Jason. We are very happy to be back again this week. I decided today to throw a curveball to you because I love doing that. We were supposed to talk about dragons. We will talk about dragons next week. Probably. Hopefully. Crossing our fingers because dragons are going to be epic. I'm looking forward to that. But This week, I got into a conversation with my kids today, and after having this conversation, I went, okay, so I want to completely change the topic tonight, and you very, very graciously allowed me to do that. So, thank you. He's so sweet to me.
I haven't said anything. You know what? That's why I am, because once I start talking, it's downhill. You said I'm so sweet, and it's like, and I haven't said anything.
You're so sweet to me.
Yes.
By allowing me to just have my way and change topics, like on the day that we're supposed to record.
Because it's I count it all as not a loss. I don't count it as a loss. I count it as,
you count it all joy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
When you're persecuted for your beliefs, isn't that the way that
No, I'm not persecuted.
Yeah.
It's a journey, It's just
Okay.
What's wrong with curveballs? Curveballs are nice.
We're rambling now, so
curveballs are good.
Topic.
Yeah.
The topic that we changed to. So I also got here because I read a really bad book this last week. And
define bad, because you've defined bad before as like, spicy bad. So what's this kind of bad?
It's honestly, it's kind of poorly written. And
we gotta be honest. We can't, we gotta,
All right. Mm-hmm. I would probably rate this about a 3 to a 3.5, just being nice.
Out of
5 stars.
Ooh. Okay. I was gonna say 10.
Well, that's usually what they do ratings.
Oh yeah. 5 stars, yeah.
But she needed an editor, the author did, and I think perhaps the age range is maybe a little bit off. I think that if this were being written for middle school girls, that it would be quite good. I think that as it is, it's probably written, intended for young adults. I don't usually have a problem reading young adult or older teen literature. Usually it's written in a way that there's still a lot of good. If you think of this as being kind of, you're going to get about as much out of it and as much depth out of the story as you would out of a Ever After High episode. That's about what you're looking at with this. But go ahead, and the book is called Nymphs Don't Date Gargoyles. It is the 5th out of the Camp Spellbound book. It deals with counselors for a camp for supernaturals. The author is Amy Horikami. I'm guessing that's how you pronounce her name. And they're all about the same, I would say. They're all about interspecies dating and dealing with I got a lot of, with that, there's a lot of themes of prejudice and possibly, it's interspecies. So you have some themes of racism, you have some themes of just, people being different than you. This one specifically said that it dealt with themes of bullying, but it was misunderstood bullying. So I'm going to go ahead and, because I'm not really recommending this as a great book, I'm going to go ahead and just spoil the entire plot and then get into connecting how this book relates to the discussion that I had with my kids today and what I actually think is an important topic.
You have read the other 4, and you said they're about the same in terms of...
They
It needs an
all
editor.
really did need an editor, and just really not a lot of depth to the point. And the biggest issue that, well, let me get into
Okay,
it a little
this will
bit.
be. You're saying this will be a good example. The
Yeah.
plot will be a good example of what you dealt with in the last four.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this one specifically, Nymphs Don't Date Gargoyles. You have the girl is a water nymph, and she's coming super excited to be coming to this camp for supernaturals. Specifically, the idea is in this world, the supernaturals have been in hiding for a long time. They've come out of hiding, and they're learning to get along not only with humans, but also with each other and supernaturals, and dealing with a lot of misconceptions between the species and that kind of thing. But this camp is supposed to be helping to just, by getting the different species together, overcoming a lot of those issues, especially, with starting out with younger kids. I think that that's pretty common for most people, is when there's an issue in the world, we tend to like to start with the kids. We say, well, if we can fix it with the kids, then, as they grow up, the world's just going to be a better place. Right.
Okay.
So I think that everybody agrees that any issues that we have, changing them, a lot of the times it's a lot harder to change older people than it is to change the younger generation, and to, really take that time when they're impressionable and teachable, and influence them for better or evil. That is always, anyway. I'm getting caught up on that.
So water nymph, main character.
Water nymph is the main character. Thank you.
Yeah.
And she goes to enter into the place where everybody's getting together. They have the training for the counselors before the camp
It's like an
actually starts.
orientation kind of.
Right, orientation. And she kind of pauses in the doorway, is kind of overwhelmed by all of the noise and all the people that are together there. As she's getting her bearings, she gets told from behind, move, Tiny. And we meet our male main character, who's very gruff, kind of growls at her. She doesn't recognize what species he is right away. Obviously, we know from the title that he's a gargoyle, but we actually spend the first probably 20% of the book with her not knowing what species he is. Actually, probably more than that. It's probably at least a third of the book that she has no idea what species he is, which actually, as the reader, is kind of frustrating to just have this be a huge mystery that the title revealed. Never usually a good idea as a writer to do that. If
I've in some of the books I've seen that tell you how to write these kinds of stories, it says uh, you can keep a mystery from the characters, but don't keep a mystery like that from the reader, because especially something that's not, the basis of the entire book,
that's the thing, though, it's a very the fact that nobody knows that he and his two buddies are gargoyles is a huge part of the book, and a part of why he's acting the way that he is. But everybody, all of the readers already know. And so we're sitting here watching her be dumb for a very long time for no reason.
we don't have a lot of respect for the character then if they're that kind of clueless.
It actually just, it drags on so long that it gets frustrating. That's part of the reason why it's poorly written, is because the author just did not know how to create any kind of tension, or how long that actually needed to go.
Or should that have been the tension? Because
That's the thing.
once
It
it kind of releases, you're like, you know,
And I mean, she's throwing out things like the main character is thinking things like, you know, their expression is just like a rock. There's, you know, he doesn't have any expressions and just keeps on throwing out this stuff like, you know, the main character can't figure out what species. And the main character, the water nymph, her parents literally are ones that worked really hard to get, you know, to work with the interspecies stuff. So she knows about all of these different species and how to identify them and all of this stuff. So she's extremely frustrated at the fact that she can't figure out what these guys are. And it come to find out it's because everybody kind of thinks that all of the gargoyles are gone. Nobody thinks that they're actually still around. So they're kind of a myth.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. And it all kind of, you know, let me
It's
just very
architecture.
quickly,
We don't use gargoyles in architecture anymore.
well, very
I don't
quickly, let
know.
me give the rundown of the plot. Turns out that nymphs don't have fated mates. However, gargoyles have fated mates. And he knows as soon as he sees her that she's his mate. However, he also knows, because he knows the history of his people, even though nobody else does, that they have basically created a false history because they were extremely desirable as warriors because they're practically indestructible, right?
Okay.
They're gargoyles, they're practically indestructible. And they also have not been able to hide as well as a lot of the other species because they can't control their change. When sun sets, they change into their gargoyle form. However, they don't go, I guess, you know, most people would think that gargoyles just turn into stone
Yeah.
overnight,
Yeah.
right? No, they just have a stone form. It's kind of described like a demon type form,
Mm-hmm.
but they can still move around and function. So, yeah, they change, but there's not a lot of negatives to it. You would think that,
In the Disney series, they were kind of the winged, kind of almost reptilian, demonic looking, but they were very warrior
yeah,
like. But the daytime when the sunlight hits them is when they would freeze into like the statue kind of forms.
right. Oh, yeah, that's true. So in this one, the daylight comes and they just
It's very
basically turn
Batman because they're
into
like
a
night.
human looking version of themselves, but they have slightly gray tinged skin and pointed ears. So during the day, they can kind of blend in with humans, but then at night, they can't. And apparently, this has caused them a lot of hardship. Plus, they're basically indestructible warriors. They are not like, and they have a hard time with their tempers as a species.
Klingons.
But yeah, so apparently they created this false history that they, you know, have spread to all of the supernatural races as well as the humans that they are extinct, but it was because they were being used as warriors.
Like
Their
like
mates were being
soldiers.
used against them. Apparently, was kind of the thing too. So they've got a lot of they hide themselves even from the other supernaturals. So all the other supernaturals are out and like free to share what they are, and they don't. And yet they're here at this camp as counselors, and the owner of the camp knows what they are and has made accommodations, but is not letting everybody else know for some reason because these guys still want to hide because they think they're going to be judged or I don't know. They got massive chips on their shoulders. Doesn't make a lot of sense. That's another one of the reasons why like you're being told
Stone
this
chips,
stuff,
rocket
but it
chips,
doesn't
shards.
necessarily always make sense. So anyway, this guy decides that even though she's his mate, that he's going to push her away and be mean towards her because he doesn't think that she will want the life of having to hide because his species is in hiding. And
And
so
why is a fated mate not another gargoyle? Okay.
every single book in the series, it's all dealt with fated mates that were cross species. The
Okay.
first one is literally called Mermaids Don't Date Krakens.
I thought you almost said crackheads.
No,
Mermaids
Krakens.
don't date crackheads. And I was
Mhm.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
they shouldn't.
because apparently mermaids and krakens are enemies.
Wasn't there
Mm.
an animated thing we watched? Ruby something, Ruby Kraken or something like that. And mermaids and krakens were like against each other. And it's, yeah.
I don't know. Okay, let me get through this plot a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit quicker because there's not much more to the plot anyway. So the she thinks that this guy is a huge bully. She stands up to him. He is conflicted and doing the whole, it kind of acts a lot like Edward, where, when Edward and Bella, I told you it seems like it was a 12-year-old has written a Twilight fan fiction, is the way that
Well,
these books feel.
once those Twilight books got popular, everybody was just aping them.
Yeah, but you know how Edward thinks that he's evil, and so he tries to push Bella away, and yet he also really, loves her, and so he's giving her all these mixed messages. Well, that's the way that you've got the whole love story in this. The guy is like at the same time as he's bullying her and saying really mean things to her, he's also acting tortured, like, and she, for some reason, feels so drawn to him that she can't just dismiss him as a bully and get him out of her head. So it's anyway. So she ends up, after discovering that he is a gargoyle and what he is and stuff, she basically, just by being generally nice to him, brings him around to actually accepting that she wants to be his mate and that she is fine with dealing with the whole hiding thing and everything. But then he stays too long hanging out with her and gets caught at sunset, like they fall asleep or something, and he gets caught at sunset, and the whole camp sees him transform into his other creature self. And they all very, very easily, just by the water nymph chick saying, "It's okay, he's good. They're not what you've been told." Then the whole entire camp is like, "Oh, it's okay, cool. We accept you." And so the entire reason for these guys having been in hiding their entire lives just goes away completely. And they live happily ever after.
Was that barely, was it super easy, barely an inconvenience?
It definitely was.
It's like they hit the
So
Staples easy button.
yeah, but that was literally the entire plot, which is
Question. Should it have been a quarter of the book figuring out that they're gargoyles, and then they do the change, and then they start then toward the middle do the change, and then she spends the last half of the book with this struggle with the rest of the people at the camp to be okay with him. In other words, it took them half the book to kind of come around. They didn't just
well,
go
most of the time
need a
there's
plot twist.
something else happening, something bigger going on, something, just anything else other than very basic. He thinks no one will accept him. She falls in love and shows him that everybody will.
He's probably a very stable guy, rock solid.
Yeah. And I mean, beyond
He doesn't
the
have a heart of
the
stone.
fact of, learning that when you understand somebody and the reasons for why they're acting a certain way, that it's very easy to fall in love with them, especially when they're, really handsome, which seems to be a pretty common trope, unfortunately, in supernatural romance. That's
Yeah,
another
but
thing we can
see,
say thank you to Twilight for.
we're not supposed to judge people according to their appearance, except all the dudes in these books are hot.
Mm, yeah, because you can forgive somebody just about any behavior as long as you're attracted to them. But that's not
That's
actually the
bad.
topic today.
Okay, so what is the topic?
So the the conversation that I had with my kids that kind of I felt like connected to this book, but I also feel like the author was trying to say something but wasn't quite sure how to say it. And yet it was there in the whole discussion of bullying and having, this guy let the way that other people defined his species influence his behavior. And the conversation that I was talking with my kids about how what other people say defines us and how we let it actually change our behavior. When we talk about bullying, when we talk about racism, when we talk about sexism, when we talk about ableism, when we talk about any of the things that we go, I don't like how other people judge me just walking out in the world. And we let that define a lot of times who we are and change our behavior. And really, the key to overcoming any of those things is always going to be, and always has been, like you look throughout history, when women were faced with sexism, specifically, I mean, there's sexism for both genders, right? But when women were faced with sexism, were told that they couldn't do something, the people that we look to as being our heroes that changed those things, they weren't the people that went out and said, you know, how dare people say that I can't do something? They were the people that just went out and did it anyway, right? They were the people that said, they think I can't do this. I'm just going to prove them wrong with my behavior. It's not about shouting people down. It's about just not letting their definition of who I am change my behavior. I'm just going to quietly go out and do it. And I feel like that's, the same way with, oh, I said ableism, people that are dealing with disabilities of all kinds. The ones that we look to and that we hold up as the heroes of actually being a change in this world are the ones who go out and just say, it doesn't matter what people say I can do, what limitations they put on me. I'm going to go keep trying, keep, going. I'm going to work through whatever I face and I'm going to do it anyway. So I think that's, if we do a title for this, I don't know, it's probably going to be not letting other people define who we are.
Mhm.
You have to know who you are. And it's something that we've been telling kids for a very long time, but I think it's still something that it's probably one of the most human things to do. To just go, if they're going to treat me like this anyway, then why even try? Why not just act the way that they think that I'm going to act anyway because it's easier? It's really the biggest thing, I think, in our country that's holding people back.
I think that some people don't even think there's any other possibility for them. This is who I am. It could be cultural, it could be any number of those things. I think that we just accept things the way they've always been and we never ask why, because there may be honestly really good reasons why things are in society or culturally, and we just there's things that we question and we fight against that are actually have a point and are actually good, and you don't just need to just rebel against them. They may actually have a purpose. Same thing with culturally speaking, but there are some things where you just kind of got to go, where did that come from? What is even the point of that? That doesn't make any sense. And yet we just kind of go, well, that's the way things are. And you know, there's some things that should be questioned, and some things that have a point. But you become the stereotype. You become what other the story that other people have written about you. Stereotypes about even autism have affected not just me, but how people talk about my kids. They seem to get this image from the media that they consume, that this is what that is. And even from other autistic people, they're like, well, that's not autism. That's not well, they may not be your brand of autism, but there is a there is a flavor that may be a little different than what you're used to. And you have to be able to speak to that as well. So I think that we're just we're letting you are letting other people define you. Let other people
Mhm.
writing your story, and you need to write your own story.
I think that when it comes to disabilities or even just abilities, it's kind of the thing. All of us have things that we're good at and things that we struggle in, right? We have,
Challenges.
right. And that is not even, anything that may necessarily be classified as a disability. We just have our strengths and our weaknesses. And when I was just thinking, I worked at Chick-fil-A from the time I was 14 up until I had my first baby. And I looked at, you know, of course this is an entry level job. It's pretty much something that anybody can come in and learn the skills necessary. But the thing that was required and the only thing that really made a difference between somebody succeeding in this job and not was their attitude. It's like, do you have a positive attitude where you're trying to learn, where you're determined that you're just going to, whatever task is thrown at you, you're going to learn it and you're going to keep at it until you become skilled at it. And for me, I was very quickly promoted into management, specifically became training manager, and was working with all of these people, teaching them these skills, and saw people that were, they started off and they fumbled. They didn't know what they were doing, but they had good attitudes. They kept trying. They became some of our most valuable employees. And then there were people that came in and they had so much talent, but they really didn't care about what they were doing and didn't really try. They just kind of, leaned around, lazed around, didn't put any effort into it. Those people were gone so fast. I saw the same in school, in college, just every single thing that I have come across, which makes me think that it's just universally true. The most important thing to whether you are going to succeed or whether you're going to fail is what you tell yourself about what you are doing. It's about your own mental attitude. Are you somebody that can come up against failure, that can come up against struggle and keep going and keep trying and go, you know what? I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to keep going. Or are you somebody that goes, yeah, I'm not good at that. I'm not ever going to become good at that, and just don't try. But I think that the biggest thought in looking at how this guy let other people and the fears of how his species was going to be perceived.
Hmm.
And then this girl and how she dealt with what she thought was this bullying behavior towards her, and how, the names that he called her and the definitions he put on her, and how she took those and really brushed them off. Like, you see this contrast between somebody who has a victim mentality
Hmm.
and someone who goes, I'm not going to let anyone else define who I am. I know who I am. It really is this, you know, he needed to see from her. It really is in this book that he's learning all the lessons because she's handling everything kind of perfectly, which, doesn't always happen in books, but the lesson is there. And I think that it's something that can be applied across our lives. Is, we've talked before. I'm going to jump for a second, and hopefully the jumping around is somehow followable. But
Hmm.
you know how we've discussed before, just you and me. I don't think we've talked about it on here, but we've talked about how much we kind of dislike the phrase "you are enough,"
Yeah.
and yet we like it too. It's one of those that there's nuance to the phrase, because so many people will say, "You are enough." And it goes hand in hand with "don't let anyone define who you are," right?
Right.
That it's along the same mentality. I think that there is truth to that statement, as long as you understand that there's a difference between "you are enough, so don't change, stay who you are," and become complacent.
That there's nothing that can be improved about
Right.
you. That's not true.
Because, especially, and let's take this to Christians, because the "you are enough" phrase is used with a lot of our Christian youth and a lot of our in our teachings. And I'm sure that there's more teachings around that. I'm not sitting in there, so I don't know what all teachings are around there. I just hear the phrase "you are enough." So I'm going to bring my own context. And I'm sure those youth pastors out there are doing it too, hopefully.
Right.
Um, but the thing is that we are messed up human beings that are in a constant, we've talked about training, right? About
Hmm.
leveling up our skills. That's what we're called to do in the Christian walk, right? We don't sit here and say, we are who we are, and we're going to just stay there. We say, I'm not who I want to be. Who I want to be is like Christ.
Right.
And so I'm going to look at every place that I am falling short of that. And through His coming alongside me, the Holy Spirit inside of us, helping us, we are going to grow. We are going to change. We're not going to be complacent about who we are. At the same time, we're going to hold this truth that God made us. He gave us all of these strengths and weaknesses, and He loves us, and He accepts us exactly as we are, and then He helps us to grow stronger. So it's this, how those two truths come together, and we go, because of the fact that He made us and He loves us like we are, and He helps us and He purifies us, we can love ourselves and keep pushing ourselves. We can go, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to not let what anybody else says I can't do stop me. And I'm going to keep going. And I'm not going to let anyone else be the voice inside my head telling me that I can't or that I'm not enough.
In a lot of songs and a lot of things that we say in Christian circles, we also say that when we say you are more than enough, we're talking about Christ.
Mhm.
We're talking about God. We're saying He is more than enough to meet all your needs and according to His riches and glory. So how is that not? You would look at somebody and you would ask them, "Are you complete?" Without Christ, are you complete? And they would say, no. And they would say, okay, so then you're not enough. But see, we have connected I'm not enough to you're thinking like someone that God doesn't exist. You're thinking in terms of the world says you are enough, and they use that phrase. What they don't understand is, well, if you're enough, why God? And the thing about that is you are enough with Christ. Recently, there was a lady on a interview, and it kind of messed with my head because she was deconstructing or something like that. She's written some books, but she had said that in all the Christian circles, they had said, Christ, you're all that I need. God, you're all that I need. That's it. And she thought of that as I'm only God, only Christ. It's all I'm connected to. And that's all I want. You're all that I want, right? But she was saying, but I want these other things too, to be honest. But the thing is, though, Christ makes all those things matter. Can you want other things than Christ on a secondary level? Yes. But when you have Christ, all those other things are lifted up and they're redeemed. It's not just like, well, what are you into? Oh, I'm just into God, into Christ. Okay, well, do you like food? No, food holds no interest for me. Activities hold no interest. It's just Christ, 24/7 for me. That's not what being a Christian is. I think what it is it's something that infuses your everyday walking around life. That's how you're enough. Now, I don't know how that even works out, but that was in me to say. I don't
I
know.
like it. And I think the other thing too that I was thinking was an important thing to say here is that you cannot live in, when you're talking about letting other people define you, there's a fear element to it, right? When you're told that other people are judging you or think that you're acting a certain way, then it changes the way that you act. It changes the things that you feel comfortable doing in this life. And it really can hold us back when we don't even realize that it is. I think that, at the same time that we don't need it to let it hold us back and we don't need to live in fear, we also need to do what's right and recognize that if you're doing the right thing and you're acting the right way, that I think that when you're doing what's right, it takes away the fear. When you're told that we live in a racist world and that you can't walk around in freedom and you let that change the way that you act,
It shades
it
everything.
shades everything. When you're
Yeah.
told that you live in a world that's sexist, then it shades everything that you do. When you're told that you're never going to be treated equally because of your your gender, your race, your
Class.
sexual orientation,
Yeah.
your class or your intelligence levels, you know, all of these things that we say, these are the things that, the world is looking down and judging you on. Things that you can't really change. They're just a part of who you are. You know, there's some things we can change. There's some things we can work through. There's other things that you can't. That literally that's who you are. And when we're told that we're being judged because of those things, and then we change the way we act, we're the ones holding us back. You know, if there's literally, if we're told that we're in such a horrible country and there are laws that are out there that are actually making it impossible for these people to exist, then we need to change those laws.
Right.
But if it's simply other people's perceptions, we're always going to be dealing with other people's perceptions, no matter who you are. It's not just even these people in these categories, it's everybody in every category has somebody that doesn't like them because of who they are. And, you know, you have to determine, who do I want to be? How do I want to act? What is the when I look at the hero, my hero, and I go, this is who they are, and this is how they act, and this is what they achieved, then I have to go, I'm going to be that. I'm going to become my hero. I'm going to take on those attributes and go out there and do it. And if there's nothing stopping you from doing that, then you're not in such a bad country after all, are you? You know? Don't be the one holding yourself back because of your frustration with other people's perceptions or the words that they might say. Go out there and be who you want to be, and then be thankful that you live in a country that can allow you to do that and to be that. And be thankful for the ones who do support you along the way, because no matter how many bad people are out there who may or may not be having bad thoughts about you, they're not stopping you. They're not stopping you. If they are, then okay, let's deal with that. But most of the time, they're not stopping you from going out and achieving whatever your dreams are. And I mean, I really think that we still are in a country that allows us to do and to be whatever we want to be. And the sky is the limit for that. And, I think about, my dad told a story, and I think that it was a true story. I don't remember where it came from. It might be from the 7 Habits of Highly Influential People. I don't,
Right.
that might be where it came from. He did teachings out of that book. So, but he talked about a class of mentally handicapped students that accidentally got put into a advanced, like in with an advanced teacher. The teacher didn't know that they were dealing with, actually, struggling students. They thought they were dealing with advanced students. So this entire class of struggling learners gets put with a teacher who is assuming that they are brilliant. And by the end of this class, like by the time that it got actually figured out that there had been a mistake, these struggling learners had improved so much just because they had the expectation that they were going to do well. They were being treated differently by their teacher. The expectations of what they were going to be able to do was entirely different, and they had stepped up. And everybody was amazed at what they had been able to accomplish in such a relatively short amount of time. And it really was, just the lesson from this was, when you are expected to succeed and given all of the tools for success, doesn't matter who you are or what your abilities are, you can succeed. And that stuck with me my entire life, is just, especially with us, with dealing with some struggling learners, is just, if they're not told what they can't do, instead they're encouraged that they can do whatever they want to, the only thing that's holding them back is figuring out what it is that they want to do.
Right.
So, I don't know. That's all I got.
Sounds good to me. So, other people's story that they tell about you is not as important as the story you tell about yourself. And the story you tell about yourself needs to be based in reality and truth. You don't need to bag on yourself and say, well, I'm not as smart as the rest. Maybe you are, and you're just telling yourself some untruths. You have to look at yourself and say, what has God made me? And what abilities has God baked into me? And what expectations does God have? and what can I have of myself, and how do I meet those, and not what everybody else tells you you're supposed to be. And not, they won't tell you overtly, they'll tell you by hints and things like that. You know, they may not come out and say it directly, but they'll say it in certain ways. But it's still a story, and it's this just the one that you tend to follow. So you can write your own story and not the story that somebody else has laid out for you.
And incredibly enough, we have a God who gives us these guidelines within which we can succeed. When we do what's right, when we treat others with kindness, when we treat others with love, and we treat ourselves with kindness and love, and when we have these values that are baked into God's principles of being hardworking, of being diligent, of continuing on with endurance, the race that's set before us, then we can overcome anything in this life. And I think just the biggest thing from this really kind of childishly written book was that sometimes it's our perceptions of what we think other people are thinking that are stopping us way more than what other people actually are thinking. You think, as a gargoyle, that you're going to be judged for who you are. Maybe, just maybe, fall in love and forget to hide, and you'll find out that it was all in your head anyway.
Yes.
All right.
Well, we're glad that you spent some time with us tonight, and I hope that you have picked out some nice little nuggets in what we've been talking about, that you've gotten some stones out of this quarry that you can take home with you throughout your week and think about them. As we ramble along with these thought processes that we have, there's gold in those hills. So think about that. Food for thought.
We'll see you next week, hopefully for dragons. Bye.